Welcome to our Workflow Wednesday for September. We're glad to see you here, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode today. This is Workflow Wednesday. We do this every first Wednesday of the month, and we're really glad to have you here. Our topic today is going to be ICC profiles, so it's going to be a good one. I will be in the chat for another 45 minutes to an hour after the presentation, so if you guys want to chat with me or you have any questions on Flexi or anything regarding what we talked about today, put it in the comments or in the chat. Let me know what questions you have. All right. So this one might go a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into our topic of conversation today. So what we're going to be talking about is creating ICC profiles. And before we actually jump into our Flexi software, we want to take a look at, talk about why should we create our own profiles? Well, at Flexi here, we believe that everybody should be creating their own profiles because it can be of a great advantage to you to get the best color out of your machine. And you might say, well, you guys offer a bunch of profiles on your website. Why do I need to create my own? Well, let's just take a quick example and not get too far into it. But let's just say the profile you downloaded was made in, let's say, the heat of Arizona. That's a pretty dry, arid place, and the temperatures are pretty high. And let's say you're in Florida where it's hot and humid. Well, that profile might not perform as well in the hot, humid temperatures as it did in the warmer, dry temperatures. In warmer, dry temperatures, that printer can actually lay down more ink than it could in a humid environment. And so depending on where the profile is made, it might actually make a difference as to where you are at in the country. So a profile that's made, let's say, in the cold up in Minnesota might be different than in the winters of Florida or something like that. So it really can make a difference. There's a lot of factors that go into printing profiles. Not only that, you could take the same printer and the same profile and then grab another printer right off the same assembly line, and they might actually print that differently. And so there's a lot of different factors going on here. And so, yeah, sometimes you can download a profile and it works great. But then other times you might download a profile from a website and you think, man, what happened to this profile? It just doesn't work at all. Like, what were they doing? Well, it could actually very well be a combination of multiple things: temperature, humidity, location, maybe even the printer slightly different. So there's a whole set of factors that can go into why your color profiles aren't working for your machine. So I know that there are guidelines. If you take a course on color correction or on ICC profiling, one of the things that they'll talk about is make sure that you maintain a excellent environment or temperature controlled environment for your printer at all times. I want to say that you should have an air conditioner heated, to around 70 degrees or so. I think is 70, 75 or something like that. And then the humidity can't be too high or too low. It's like there's a perfect balance point there that people talk about. That is true. If you keep your printer in the garage or in a shop that's like 98 degrees outside and it's just hot out there when it's printing, that profile is probably not going to print very well. Or on the opposite case, if you're in a colder environment and your printer sits out in a garage or in a shop, again, where maybe the temperature only gets up to like 50, 60 degrees, that's going to be an issue. And so knowing that ahead of time and saying, okay, well, what if I have good environment for my printer and it still doesn't print right? Well, this is where creating your own profile is really going to hit the nail for you, because it's going to take all those variables and customize them for your machine. So enough talking about that. Let's take a look at the process of how to make a profile in Flexi so that you guys are better informed on how to do this within our software. So let's do a quick screen share here. All right. So we've got Flexi, or our production manager, pulled up here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my Muto printer here. And the reason why I have this 1628 here is just because I want to be able to show you CMYK, light cyan, and light magenta. So this one can do that. And I just happen to have this one on here. So I'm going to go to my second tab here, click down and go to Color Profiler. Now I'm going to start out in this screen at first, and I'm going to explain why I'm going to switch out of it in a second. I want to be able to kind of go into some of the settings, but because I don't actually have this printer connected to my device or my laptop, we're going to actually jump out and take a look at some settings of another profile after we get past the first, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So you're going to get to the screen when you click on that, and you're going to say, create an ICC profile. You're going to then get this screen right here. This screen here is basically going to show us exactly where we need to go in order to, or what our preferences or what our goal is for the profile overall. So we've got our device, and then we've got our print modes. We've got a bunch of ranging print modes. So quality 1 through 4 are going to be your higher quality ones. So you can see that this one here is listed at 1440 by 1440. And then quality 4 is 720 by 1440. And then if we go to graphics 4, 720 by 720. So graphics are going to be your medium profiles, and then your banner ones are going to be your lower profiles, or you can go custom or create your own. So it kind of is up to you what you want to do in terms of this. I'm going to go with just graphics 1. That's a nice general middle of the road type profile. Then you're going to go with your color mode. So if you have 4 colors, CMYK is what you'll choose. In this particular case, I want to do light cyan, light magenta. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. In fact, actually, I'm going to try and do the variable dot. If I can, I would always want to choose the variable dot just simply because it helps prevent patterns and things like that in the print. So I'm going to do that. Now, this is going to be an interesting one here. Now, this is one you'll have to make a personal choice on as to which one you want to do. I can't really recommend any specifically. Instead, Enhanced Stochastic 2 is the one that goes in there by default, and I think it's a decent option. You'll have to make this choice on your own, though. We actually do have a really good resource for you guys on this. If you go over to your cloud window, click on Help, Support, and Training, and then click on our knowledge base, it'll actually pull up a website. And what we can do here is we can search Dither Type. And then I'm going to click on Job Properties and scroll down a little bit. And here we have all of the different types of dither. So we've got a definition of dither and what it does. And then we have all the different options. Now, some of these have different advantages and disadvantages. So for example, error diffusion is usually done for high quality images. So it's a slower print and it's a slower ripping process. So it's going to take a little longer to rip, a little bit longer to process, but you're typically going to get a higher quality image. As opposed to, say, LX diffusion, this is a much faster option. So it's going to rip much faster, but it's not going to give you quite the quality. So in their definition here, it says it's best used for large prints that are going to be used or viewed from a long ways away. So each one of them has their pros and cons. Kind of figure out what your use case scenario for this type of profile is going to be. Are you going to be printing banners? Are you going to be printing, decals? Are you going to be doing graphics that are up close? What's your use case scenario? Figure that out for this profile, and then decide what you're going to do kind of based on some of these things, whether you want to go high quality, low quality, faster rip, balance, whatever you want to do. So those are available to you on our website. So now that we've chosen, dither, color mode, all that kind of stuff, we're going to click on driver options. Now, again, this is also going to be one of those areas where you're going to have to make some decisions based on some research. So by default, they'll be set to the use printer default. And I think for the most part, this is going to be fine and okay. The only time you may want to change this is if you're having specific issues with these particular things. Like for example, if you want to go from unidirectional to bidirectional, unidirectional only prints in one direction versus bidirectional prints in both head travel directions. We've got some vacuum fan stuff here. So to hold down the material as it's going over. So you've got some settings there. These will be a good thing to check with the manufacturer of your printer and say, hey, what are some good settings with this type of material that I should use? And they can probably give you that information and kind of provide you with some tips in that regard. The other information that we want to kind of pay attention to is your heater options. So this is where you're going to reach out to the media manufacturer. So let's just say we buy some 3M IJ180. That particular media is going to have a heat index or a heat tolerance that it can support. They will be able to provide that to you. So when you create your profile, you want to make sure and set your heaters appropriately so that you're not overheating or underheating. Some of the disadvantages of what can happen is if you underheat, so you don't provide enough heat to the material, you actually can't lay down as much ink because then the material doesn't absorb it and it doesn't dry well enough. If you put it too high, especially like on cheaper medias, like the no-name brand type stuff, higher temperatures can cause wrinkling or other issues with the media where it actually just won't absorb or damages it. It can cause all kinds of issues like that. So you're going to want to go to your media manufacturer and find out, what the best temperatures are for the preheater, the platen, the dryer, or what temperatures they recommend for those things. This is going to play an important role on how much ink you can put down. So this will be an important one to kind of make sure and get right. We're going to hit OK on this because there's a lot of other settings that you can kind of take a look at. And again, these are going to change based on your machine. So this is not going to look the same for every user. This will actually be different. And so you'll just kind of need to, look at the device that you have. And again, this screen will change based on what machine you have. I'm going to hit OK. And then at this point, I can give my media a name. Give this media a name that makes sense to you so that when you see it, you know what that profile is all about and you know what it's for. So give that a name and then hit next. Now, this is where I'm going to split off for a second here. I'm actually going to close this window and I'm going to open up a profile that was already created. The reason for this is because since I don't have a printer connected to my device right now, it won't let me hit next and go to the next step because I actually don't have a device connected or anything. So in order for me to process through the next couple steps, I'm going to actually close this window. And I'm going to open up the same thing again, except for I'm just going to open an existing profile that we've already created that's on my desktop here. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to go back to the beginning here. So let's just kind of briefly go over this again. So here you can kind of see in this profile that they were creating, these are the settings that they chose. Quality 4, there's their settings here for resolution. They chose enhanced stochastic. They went with the CMYK, light cyan, light magenta, okay? And they give it a name. So hit next, and now we're back to the screen. Okay, so now when you see this screen for the first time, all of these variables are gonna be set to 100%. And that's the way they should be. You're gonna go ahead and just print the ink limit test. You're not gonna change anything, you're not gonna do anything. They'll all be at 100, and you're just gonna print it. And it's going to print this chart down here below. So we're not going to do anything with these yet. We're going to let this print, and we're going to take a look at the swatches and see what they look like. You're going to examine them closely. We're going to be looking for two things. First thing we're going to be looking for is ink saturation, or to see if there's any pooling or any other issues. So you can kind of see the example that they show here, the good and the bad. The good one has nice crisp lines. It has straight slants. There's no bleed going into the white. The color is uniform. That's also very important. It's uniform. It's not darker in some areas and lighter in others. It's all perfect. It also doesn't, it feels smooth. So you shouldn't be able to feel a difference between where there's ink and where there isn't ink. If you can feel like a ribbed, like it kind of feels like you're going over like speed bumps over here with your finger, that shouldn't happen. That means you've got too much ink and it's actually creating layers. That's too much. So it should feel smooth to the touch, very crisp lines, no overbleeding, no fuzziness. All that should be good. A bad example would be non-uniform color, maybe bubbles or pooling, or blurry, fuzzy edges, or discoloration. So you might maybe have darker on one side and lighter on the other. Those are all signs of too much ink or incorrect ink setting. So basically, we're wanting it to look more like this side. So when we look at our chart, you're going to find that medium. So you're going to say, okay, where, between, 80, whatever the percentage is, where does it hit that mark versus, where we're going to be. Now, I'll tell you this, higher quality profiles typically are slower and they can take more ink. And so typically these numbers will be higher. If you're on a lower quality profile, you're printing faster, the media is moving through and over the heater faster. And so it has less time to dry. So your numbers are actually going to be lower. So just be aware of that. That's normal and that's okay. So let's just, so that's the first step. We're looking for consistency in color. The second thing that we're going to be looking for is to make sure that when we get to a certain color, we don't go past the bridge. And what I mean by that is let's just look at an example. So let's just pretend that between 85% and 100%, let's say that all four of those colors look perfect. They look good, they're sharp, they're smooth. But when I look at 85, 90, 95, and 100, the color doesn't get any darker. It doesn't really change. It seems to just be the same. If that's the case, you want to go with the lower number. There's no point in using more ink to get the same result. That'll actually cost you more money down the road. This can actually save you money, save you a lot of money. And so if you can get the same color by using 85% as with 90, 95, or 100, then I would go with 85% every time, because that's a little bit less ink, and it may not seem like a whole lot at first, but over feet and feet and feet of media, that can go through a lot of ink. And so really, when we're looking at this, we want to go with the lowest color possible that doesn't change. If there's a difference between 80 and 85, then you need to go with 85. Or if there's a difference between 85 and 90, you need to go with the higher number. But if they all look exactly the same, then you can go with the lower number and not sacrifice color gamut. So you want the largest color gamut while using the least amount of ink. So that's kind of the goal here. And we're going to do that with every single color. Now, one of the things to remember, a little tip here, is you don't want to see these numbers jumping around too much. They should all be around the same. I would say with between 5 or 10%. So we're looking at, 70, 75, 65 in that range. 5 to 10 is what I would say. Now, if you look at this profile, they did 55, 55, or 50, 55, 50, 50, and then they did one at 65. I'm not sure what's going on with the magenta here, but maybe I would back that off or trying to keep it a little bit closer. The thing that you don't want to happen is if you have too much of a variance in your color, say like in this particular case, the magenta, what might actually happen is colors that are super sensitive to the percentages of ink, like gray, for example, might turn out pink. So we want these to be pretty balanced. Again, they don't need to all be exactly the same, but we don't want to see one at 65, one at 95, and then one at 70. That those kind of jumps like that is what we're kind of trying to avoid. We want them to be fairly similar, at least within 5 or 10%. So you're going to read the chart, make the adjustments, and then you're going to print the verification. Do not skip the step. You must print the verification. It is always worth the material to verify what you've done. When you print the verification, it takes your maximum value. So let's say the 65 in the magenta, it puts the 65 at the top and then redistributes the entire graph. And then it actually changes the increments. I think it goes by 2 or I think maybe 3% increments instead of 5. And so you can even fine tune it even more. So print the verification, fine tune it if you think you need to make some adjustments. Maybe go a percentage or 2 less or up or down or however you think that should go, and then make those adjustments again. Once you've made the adjustments, so if you've printed the verification and you've looked at it and you made some adjustments to this chart, print the verification again until you get to the point where you don't make any changes to the verification. That's when you can move on to the next step. All right. That verification is important because these ink limits are the key to the correct color here. So make sure you take your time with that. The next step, if you have a CMYK machine, this step is not even going to show up. This will only show up if you have the light cyan, light magenta, or one of the other light colors. This is the ink limit settings for light cyan, light magenta, or light black. Again, this step won't even pop up if you don't have that ink set chosen. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to print the ink split test. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open up a little graphic here. And this is what it's going to do. It's going to print that out. And we're going to do something similar that we did to step 1. So this is the image that it's going to print out. You're going to get a bar of light cyan. And then you have a bar over here of regular cyan. And then in the middle is going to be the mixture between the two. So it's a mixture of light cyan and cyan. So what we're looking for is we should see a light area in the beginning of the light cyan because it's light. These are our really light colors. And then it should darken up to a certain extent. And then it should start to fade off slowly. We should see the same kind of thing over here on this bar. We should see nothing, nothing, nothing for a while. And then it should slowly start to gradually turn in and turn darker. Then, when we look at the combination of the two, what we should be looking for is a seamless transition between all the percentage points, okay? I want to see in the middle, this should be right in the middle of here and here. And what I'm trying to look for is jumps in color. So if I say, let's say that I'm going along here and all of a sudden it jumps from 40 to 55, like the color just jumps a drastic amount between 40 and 45. That's a problem. So if that's happening, I need to make sure and say, okay, I look at the charts below and I say, is the cyan coming in too quickly? Am I putting in the cyan too soon? Or is my light cyan going too far? Or is it not going far enough? Perhaps, if you get like a color where it goes light, it goes darker, and then it gets a little bit lighter and then gets a little bit darker. Maybe your light cyan is not pulling in far enough. You're not pulling it down far enough. So kind of look at what you see here and say, okay, I need a perfect transition here. So I need to get this as perfect as I possibly can. Get it the best. And the way that you do that is by adjusting these curves. So you can see this is the curve that they went with this particular profile. You can use these little handles to adjust different things, up or down. So for example, let's grab this guy. I can take this and I can move this up or down. So if I want to increase the ink limit, so right here, it was at 20, and now I could increase it to 40 if I want to, or something like that. Again, I can make small adjustments here. Maybe I need to back off my cyan a little bit. If you look at the values here, the light cyan starts at 0, starts to spike up between 5 and 10%, and then peaks out at 20, and then starts to fade off. That's right about the time when our regular cyan is starting to kick in at 10%, and then it's really starting to kick in at like 15, 20, and then this is starting to fade away. Something like this is a good graph, but again, you don't want to just put in a generic graph. You want to tailor it to your printer. You look at the graph that it's showing you, find out where the issues are, kind of look at this and say, okay, do I have a smooth transition? Is the dark color coming in too fast? Is it not balanced? You're looking at all those different things and then making a judgment call and saying, okay, well, maybe we need to pull the light back first, or maybe do some adjustments here. Again, you go ahead and you make the adjustments and you print the verification. Print that verification, look at it again. Are there any adjustments that could be made? Can you make it a little bit smoother? Can we make an adjustment here or there? No? Are we good? Great. Hit next. If not, print it again. Print another verification. Keep doing that. Keep making adjustments until it's perfect. Once it's perfect, or you like it, it looks really good to you, you think it looks like smooth, it's transitioning really well, we don't have any jumps in color, everything seems balanced, then we can go on to the next step. And you'll need to do this for both colors. So cyan and magenta in this case, both colors will need to do it. All right, so we'll hit next. We'll just say no. We don't want to change this profile. This is where we get to scanning the profile in. So this is a nice little spot here. So this is the list of devices that we support. So we see we got the X-Rite devices. We also support some of the Barbieri stuff. And then we also support some of the on-machine devices like the HP ones and the Muto ones. So depending on what you want, there's all kinds of different price points here. You've got some of the manual ones that you just use. You scroll, you scan with your hand, you just grab it and drag it across the swatches manually. Or you've got some really expensive ones that actually do all the work for you, and they just are automatic and they read all the swatches. That's kind of for you to set the device here. Make sure you install the USB drivers, get all that installed, and then just kind of calibrate it and set it up here. Your device will kind of probably be different for each one. So just kind of work with the instructions on your device to install all the drivers that you need for that. Now we're going to print our swatch tables. So I would always recommend that you go with enhanced. And the reason why I say this is because the bigger the swatch table, the better, really. Basically, if you change this from 5 to 10 or 2.5, they're just basically smaller versions of the same thing. But if you print more colors, the more colors you scan in to your profiler, the more accurate it's going to be. So I always recommend go big. Go with the big enhanced one with the most colors. You're going to get better results, more accurate in your profiling. So I would just say always go with the large one. I know it's more media, but it's worth it. Trust me, it's worth doing. So once you print it out, your target size is going to be chosen automatically based on the device that you choose. This is basically just the size of the square that it prints out. Each device is a little bit different in terms of what size of swatch that it recommends. And so just leave that at the default, unless the documentation for your device specifically says that you should change it to a different one. So just kind of be aware of that. All right. So then what you're going to do is you're going to click measure. And then based on your device will take over from there. So whether you're doing it by hand and clicking the button and dragging it across, or whether you just have to press something on your machine for it to start reading, whatever the case is, this is where it's going to start reading. So you click on this, you read, and you're scanning all your swatches. Again, you're probably going to follow the instructions on how to use your device. Whichever one you buy, there'll be instructions on how to use it. So you'll follow those instructions. And what we're looking for is not exact color replicas. You can see here that in our example that the colors don't match exactly. They're a little off, and that's okay. We're not looking for exact color replication here. What we're looking for is making sure that the colors match up with what they're supposed to be. So cyan should be with cyan, magenta should be with magenta, yellow with yellow, black and black. I shouldn't see any magenta under a yellow square, or I shouldn't see any magenta under a blue square. If those colors are mixed up, you can use these buttons over here to either rescan one swatch, or you can rescan a whole row if you need to. So if you see something like that, again, what we're looking for is to make sure that they all fall within the range that they're supposed to be. So no yellows with other colors and things like that. So consistency. And I'm going to scroll through here and look through each one of them to make sure that that looks correct. Now, I can click on this button here. Once I've scanned everything in, I can click on my linearization curve, and I can take a look at my curve and see what it looks like. So I can do this for all my different colors. And what you should see, and this is, again, just another step that you can use to verify what you've done to make sure that it looks good. You're looking for a smooth transition here. So it should be a nice smooth arc from top to bottom. Now, I'm not exactly sure what's going on right here. Yeah, I didn't make this profile, so I'm not sure. But if I saw this, I would probably try and see if I could do something. There might be something here going on. It looks like that's right where the light cyan and the light magenta and the regular magenta transition is happening. So maybe I should make some adjustments to my light cyan or my darks or my regular cyan, or keep saying cyan, but my magenta here, to make sure that it's curving a little bit more smoothly. This is fine, but I would like to see it more like what we see up here. See how it's kind of a nice smooth line? It's kind of nice and curvy. Then all of a sudden it does this weird little jog. It seems like all the colors except for yellow. So yellow is pretty good. So if I look at my yellow transition is really nice and smooth. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Those little jogs there are not exactly ideal. This is okay up here because once we get this dark, we're fine. So, but definitely the cyan has a little bit of a weird thing going on. And again, I think that's right where the light cyan and the dark cyan are kind of mixing, and we need to make some adjustments there. So that's just my take on it. Again, this might be really hard to see. So we're going to hit close. We're just going to leave it at there for now, but you could go back and change your ink limits. And I would probably start with my light cyan, light magenta, and kind of see if I can adjust that a little bit just to see where we're at. If everything looks good and you're happy with the charts and everything, I would say go ahead and hit next. Now, this is, again, we're going to kind of fly through this a little bit quickly. It looks exactly like step number 1. All right, I guess it would be step number 2, the linearization, or our ink limits. We're doing ink limits again, except for this time, we're just combining inks. Before, we were just doing each ink separately. Now we're combining things to make sure that when we combine multiple inks together, we're not pooling and causing other problems. So you can see that we're doing cyan plus magenta, cyan plus yellow, magenta plus yellow. We've got some 3-color ones in here, so cyan, magenta, and yellow. So you've got some different options in here. Again, same thing that we're looking before. We're looking for a nice smooth finish, even color, even distribution of color. The whole swatch should look the same color. And then make sure that there's no pooling or white spots for the bad. And then also make sure that you go as far up as you can without having to compromise in color. So again, where we talked about if you can go 90 or 95 and they're exactly the same, go 90. But go as far as you can. You can see here that most of them landed at 90 in this case, and then a few 85s, and it looks like they threw in a few 75s. This makes sense that as you add more colors, that you would back off these colors a little bit. So in this particular case, you've got the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. They backed it off a little bit. That's a lot of ink that you're putting down. So, you want to make sure that that's good to go there. All right, so you're going to print that, verify it, print it, verify it. You keep doing that until it looks perfect to you. You think it looks good. And then we go on to the next step. So again, this is going to be a repeat of 2 steps ago. So instead of linearization, we're going to do characterization. And characterization is the combination of all the colors. Set up your device like you did in that other step. And then you're going to choose the swatches. Now, here again, this particular profile was created with 400, the TC 3.5, which is 432 swatches. I would recommend against that. I would always go with the larger swatches. Again, more colors can potentially mean more color gamut. It could also potentially mean more color accuracy. So I always like to err on the side of more colors versus less colors. So if I was doing this profile myself, I would have done the 1485 swatches. Yes, it takes more media. Yes, it probably takes more time, especially if you're doing it with the manual one. But the results that you'll get from this versus the other one, it's no contest in my opinion. We use more swatches, but unfortunately they didn't do that, and that's fine. That was kind of just their call when they made this profile. Again, I'm looking for colors to match up. So red with red, dark colors with dark, gray with gray, blue with blue. I don't want to see any yellows or weird colors in odd spots. They don't need to match exactly, but I shouldn't see anything conflicting here. So if I end up having a color that, like if I have a green under a yellow swatch, that's going to cause some real issues for you when you're printing. It'll actually flip those colors. And so when you want to print yellow, it'll print green. So that's not a good thing. So you want to click through and just look through each one of these and make sure that each one kind of matches up the way that it should and that the colors are correct before you move on. That's really important because it will mess up your profile. Again, it's just a matter of looking at it visually. Shouldn't take too long. Just scroll through there and just kind of make sure everything looks good and then hit next. This will be our final step. So at this point, it gives us our curves here. Again, our light cyan, light magenta is doing something a little bit weird here. And our yellow is kind of right on target. So I think we could do some adjustments there. This is our measurement data here in our output. For these settings, most of these settings are going to be set for you automatically. The only one that I would recommend changing would be your black start value. You could start that at 0 or 5%. This also depends if you have light black. So if you have light black, you might change this to, a different value, I don't know, 5-10% or something like that. So this might change based on that. You could leave that at 0 and it'll probably be okay. That'll probably be a good default. Black generation, this particular one was set to GCR. The default, I believe, is GCR smooth. Those are probably the two that I would probably go with. Again, I would probably just go online, do a Google search of what each one of these does and kind of what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are and kind of determine what you want to do. But if this is the first profile that you're making, I would definitely go GCR or GCR smooth. Probably GCR smooth is what I would recommend. And then the rest of this information, we're not going to really change. We're going to leave the ICC version at 4. We're going to make the profile large. That's fine. We're not going to do anything with chroma or with brightener or anything like that. And we're not going to change our black point. So we're going to leave all that the same and then just let that go. So with that, I can just hit generate and that will create my profile. And then now I can use it. So what I would do is I would go into Flexi and then maybe load up our test file. We have a really good test file. I'm going to go ahead and close this. We have a really good test file in our samples folder inside of our software. I have them saved a little bit differently. I don't know if this is the one or not. This is a slightly newer one. We'll see if it loads up here. Okay, yep, this is the standard one we use. If we open this up, it gives you a really good way to test your profile and kind of gives you the gamut. So you got some RGB bitmaps, you've got some CMYK bitmaps, and you also have some spot colors, some color wheels, lab colors, all kinds of variety of different things in here, some skin tones and whatnot, some bright reds. So you can use this as a template to say, okay, how is it printing in each one of these types of scenarios? And so this is a really good file to print. check your profile to see how it's working, see if you want to make any adjustments. If you want to make any adjustments to your profile, you can certainly do that. You can go into your color profiler and just say modify the profile, navigate to that profile, open it up. You can change ink limits. Just make sure that if you do make any changes, you have to rescan in everything again. So you have to recalibrate the profile again. So anytime you make a change, you do have to change things, or you have to rescan swatches and things like that. So just be aware of that. If you make changes, you do need to rescan in your changes. But that's the color profiler. It's not too hard. I know that at first, the first time you do it, it might take you a little bit while, but once you kind of get the hang of it, you can actually get a profile done in 20 or 30 minutes and have a really good profile. We would recommend that when you create profiles, that you have let's say you have 2 or 3 different medias that you use, and you have like a high and low quality for each one. I would say do a profile for each. So, your banner, do a high and a low. Your regular vinyl, do a high and a low. Different things like that. Have different options available for you, so that you can have profiles that are tailored to each device. You really don't want to mix and match different profiles with settings. So if you create a high quality profile, you don't want to change that profile in the rip and print settings to low quality, because it really won't work. It doesn't do the right things that it needs to do for that profile to work. You really do need to create a separate profile for it. So hopefully this helps. We also have a PDF that kind of walks through some of the stuff that you saw me do today with some of the stuff written out. If you're interested in that, just email us at eSupport at thinksai.com. So eSupport at thinksai.com. We can send you that PDF if you're interested in it. Kind of gives you a walkthrough of everything that we talked about today, and it kind of gives you some of the tips and tricks that I used and kind of mentioned, plus some additional information. So if you're interested in that, just email us. We'll send it to you. We'd be glad to have it. Again, I'll be in the chat for another 45 minutes to an hour. So if you have questions, let me know. I'd love to chat with you about it. Hopefully this will help you guys get better color. I really do believe, and I've seen it happen time and time again, where somebody goes from our default to a custom profile and it just changes their world. So if you want to be the guy or shop in town that has the best color in town, the investment in the hardware for color, the color spectrophotometer and whatnot is worth it. It's worth it, the money in gold. I would definitely highly recommend that you do it. I think you'll really find that you can get some really amazing color and save yourself some money by going with a custom profile versus just a generic one from either us or from somebody else. So with all that, thank you guys for hanging with us today. And I know it's a little bit longer one. Thank you for coming and watching and enjoying it. We will see you guys next month, and have a great day.